What am I going to be telling you about today? Today we're going to be talking about the era of animation known as the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages is one of those nebulous things. It's hard to put an exact date on it. Some would go as far back as 1966, the death of Walt Disney, and some would put it some point after the death of his brother Roy in 1971, during an era where for about 18 years there was uneven performance of their feature-length animation studios. But ultimately we know it culminated in 1985 with the disastrous release of The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron is important because it's almost been entirely forgotten. It had a very long delayed release before it was available in any home format. It was released in 1985. For almost a decade, it was just something Disney had forgotten about because it had so underperformed. Having seen it recently, it is beautifully animated. It is one of the first instances of them incorporating computer animation to create scenery, so it is groundbreaking in that. But the story it's telling is bland, and I can see from certain elements of it. It is very dark, and so a child seeing it in theaters is going to be equal parts bored and terrified. And because of the amount of money that it lost the studio, it then began the executives questioning the future of the animation department and whether or not they needed to continue creating animated features at all. I don't know. They want to talk about the Dark Ages as if though it is a severe lack in quality. I don't know that that's the thing. I don't think the information or the techniques were lost, but I do feel like limitations were placed on animators by executives that prevented them from being as creative as they could, and therefore led to a certain era of lackluster, bland projects that just didn't energize people. In terms of what began to lift them out of the Dark Ages, it would be the films they created during their competition with Don Bluth, which would lead me into the film just before The Black Cauldron, The Fox and the Hound, 1981. And during the production of that, several animators became fed up with the process, and essentially they walked away from Disney. And chief among them was animator Don Bluth, who went and formed his own animation studio and began to make full-length animated features that began to compete with Disney. His first offering onto the market was 1982's The Secret of NIMH. The Dark Ages decisively have an end in 1989 with the release of Disney's The Little Mermaid. It is what is seen as the beginning of the rebirth of excitement for animation and in the quality of animation, and is usually referred to as the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. There was an era of animation that people like to refer to as the Dark Ages, which I feel is a misnomer. It was a lack of passion created by hindering the creativity of animators, which led to projects that underperformed because the audiences, I feel, could perceive that lack of quality. It wasn't dark so much as it was dull.